Welcome everybody to another episode of Chaos and Comics, the Fist on Chin, sub show. We are now as consistent on this channel and on this podcast, Afshin, as we have been since I was going to say 2 years, but you know what? We did a whole series on that Michael Jordan. That Michael Jordan documentary. We were there every week. The Last Dance. We were there every week. So aside from that, this is the most
consistent that we've been since last summer. Great.
Yeah. If you didn't count the Michael Jordan documentary, we weren't we were more of a podcast than a YouTube channel,
Sure.
But we are both, by the way. I don't know. I forgot to tell you this. But you can also find our conversation, the post-mortem on the Overeem versus Volkov card. You can also find that on all of your favorite podcast networks, which for most people that's iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever it is now. So,
Okay.
But also on all the Android ones and whatnot too. So my name's Chris Arda. This is Afshin Hayat. We are going to talk MMA mostly. If you see Afshin, we're going to talk MMA. There's like maybe a
I know nothing else.
Maybe a 10% chance we talk about boxing, but it's mostly about MMA. Maybe like a 5% chance if there's a good glory card.
Everything is a foreign language.
Yeah, exactly. You can find me at Chris Sarda. You can find you can on Twitter. You can also find both of the sports accounts at Chaotic Sports and at Fist on Chin. We'll probably start reviving Fist on Chin. I might give Afshin the password so that we could just post a ton of MMA content on there. Afshin, to me, it's all sports. I'll watch underwater basket weaving if there's defense and tackling.
That sounds fun. Sign me up for that.
Yeah. But the market for MMA is much different than the market for NBA and NFL, to be honest. A lot of NFL guys don't like fighting, and a lot of fight fans don't like NFL. They just say they both like it, but they don't really spend time on it.
It's true. A lot of people, you have your people who, prefer certain sports, but they like to watch all of them, keep up with all of them. I mean, that way you get a 12-month season. I get that through like fight sports. So I'm good. I follow Philly sports and I follow San Antonio Spurs. But
you don't really follow them. You don't really.
Ask me the last time I watched one of their games. I just follow all the stats.
Yeah. So, anyway, let's get into it. There's actually not a ton of news, to be honest. There's a little bit here and there, which we'll get into first. But I think the real conversation here and the real gist of what we can talk about here is gonna be the main event of UFC 258, which is Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns.
Yep.
And I know you have a lot of talking points, but let me just start from the very top. Okay. Does Gilbert Burns deserve this fight?
He deserved it in June when he beat Tyron Woodley, and then a lot of things happened in their division, including the champ fighting, and then everyone else getting victories. Colby Covington got a more dominant victory. Nate Diaz wants to come back. So in terms of meritocracy, assuming that 6 months, 7 months doesn't make your merit expire, yeah. Are they kind of doing a favor for him and saying, you know what, you missed the fight, you had your chance, get to the back of the line? They're allowing him to stay at the front. So, but his win over Woodley looks a little bit less impressive than it did a year ago after Colby beat him, and then you see he's really fallen off.
Yeah, Woodley's one of the big. I mean, that seems to happen at welterweight, by the way. I mean, Johnny Hendricks. I can think of a bunch of welterweights that seem to be like king of the world and then just fell off to hell. I mean, Johnny Hendricks was because of PEDs for sure, or at least
think so.
At least
he said it was having to do with the IVs. Once they took the IVs away, which coincidentally had to do with USADA, 2015 really when he started to fall off. And then he said after IVs were banned, he no longer could hydrate properly because, as you know, he liked to eat.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I just believe GSP essentially with GSP. He couldn't say it outright, but I'm gonna go with GSP on this one. I mean, Colby did fine. He beat Tyron Woodley, great, but so did Gilbert Burns. But I mean, Kamaru Usman's recently beaten Colby Covington, you know, and
that's true. Like 2 fights removed.
Yeah, and not even a boring Kamaru Usman wrestles him down and punches him.
What a heck of a fight it was! It was incredible. It was an incredible fight. For what I was expecting, I expected clinch on the cage, reverse position, clinch on the cage, failed takedown attempt, ugly boxing, got a little bit of ugly striking. It definitely wasn't like the highest level striking, but it was very competitive, which really made up for the discrepancy.
To be fair, it feels like wrestlers do that. Wrestlers come out when it's 2 wrestlers. Do you think they're just going to wrestle each other? It turns out to be a fun-looking fight. It's when 2 jiu-jitsu guys go against each other that it just becomes a really crappy kickboxing fight.
Yeah,
you know, like the wrestlers seem to have power for some reason. I don't really. You know, you find all these guys that are like wrestling background, and they seem to be able to like lay people out with their punches, even though they're not the most technical strikers.
Yeah. What do you think Ben Askren would have looked against Kamaru Usman? Would that have been
a knocked down? That'd have been a striking fight. He'd got knocked out.
He probably would have gotten murdered. Yeah. So with this fight coming up, you know, here's the thing: if you watched Woodley and Burns, you watched their fight from the start. Woodley got hurt, and Burns looked big in that fight. He had no problems like blast doubles on Woodley and bullying him around. But I'll tell you, I don't think he's going to look big in this fight. I think he's going to look small. I think Kamaru Usman is pretty big.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to use his weight, a lot of clinch work, and I think he's going to use his size. And in this case, it's going to make Burns look small for the division at times. He's got to figure out how to get away from him.
So wrestling, there's Burns not going to be effective submission-wise at all?
So here's the thing. I was following the media day today, and Kamaru Usman's never been taken down. And I don't believe he's been knocked down either. With that, he actually barely gets hit. He takes about 2.25 strikes per minute, and he lands, I think it's over 4 strikes a minute. Let me confirm that. He's landing 4.5, and he's taking 2.23. So he lands 2 for every 1 he takes, which is pretty good. And 4.5 strikes is a lot of strikes to land in a minute, especially at that level. And he hasn't been taken down, so I think it would have to be the chances of him getting taken down would have to be off the striking. I think Burns will have to surprise him early, like he did Woodley, and then establish some sort of hesitancy. But man, you know, it's hard to predict that to happen when nothing close has happened to that, you know?
Yeah, and the other thing about Usman is he's very consistent, you know, because I think he keeps, what I mean by consistent is that he keeps at it, you know, like Masvidal, if you rewatch that fight, I mean, Masvidal didn't win, I don't think, a round. Even maybe 1, but I mean, he got dominated, but he was actually pretty successul at his takedown defense, or at least getting right back up. The problem is that he just had to keep doing it. You know what I mean? He'd get taken down for a second, he'd get up, but you know, Usman never stopped. And so I think that's what I mean, Gilbert Burns would have to do it off of the striking, but I don't expect Usman to really quit. And I don't see Gilbert Burns, you know, pulling like a triangle or something from the bottom necessarily.
No, I think Usman's too smart. The one thing that is lacking in some of the champions is consistency, and Kamaru Usman is as consistent as they get. He is more consistent than Woodley was as a champ, and he reminds me of George St. Pierre, although at this stage of his title run, he's being a little bit more dynamic than St. Pierre was in that string of decision victories. Recency bias makes me think that Usman may struggle, as he did with Jorge Masvidal, to be dominant. He was like in front the whole way, but Masvidal was behind him, making him work for every inch. And I don't know. What do you think? How much of that had to do with the opponent change last minute? I think Masvidal took that on like 5 days notice. And so at that point, with the opponent change, the complete opponent change, plus the momentum. That was coming off. What do you
what
think?
that fight looked like to me? But
Cormier Silva.
Exactly. I was exactly going to say that. I swear to God. I was going to say just the fight I was going to compare. Cormier had a little bit better success, but it was like, hey, short, short change in opponent against an opponent that's dangerous. I get it that Silva was old, and I get it that Masvidal obviously could be taken down, but there was a little bit still of aura between both of them, right? So what you ended up having both Usman and Cormier do was just go to the bread and butter and rely on it, and it worked.
Yeah.
And thank God that they don't do that every fucking fight. Cormier could have theoretically just done that instead of stood in front of Stipe. Just to some extent. I mean, I know Stipe is a good wrestler and stuff, but
just went straight at him and grappled hard as a main focus.
Yeah, maybe just maybe up the grappling 25% against Stipe. Who knows what happens? But yeah, it's crazy that you called that out, because that's exactly when you mentioned that. It's exactly what I thought. Is short notice change. You are a great wrestler. Both of them are great wrestlers. You got to rely on that, and that's what you have to rely on, because there's really no real chance to like study the opponent or anything like that, or watch.
Right. You have to in that aspect, you have to really just have one focus. You don't really have too much time to adapt to the opponent, so you kind of have to just attack them in one zone and hit them that direction the whole way, and just get through it, because that's a very stressful situation for all of them.
Yeah, and where Cormier had a lot more success, he held Silva down, on his back.
Fighting a middleweight who had just had like gallbladder surgery a couple months earlier. So
yeah, exactly. And Usman definitely had success, you know what I mean? But he just had to keep going at it. Like he did 25 minutes of really hard work, takedown, stand up, takedown again, clinch.
You're right. And so I think even the success that Masvidal had, I think if they had a rematch, although it could look like a repeat of that because Usman knows what worked the first time, I would expect that one to look a little bit different. With this being the second time that he's prepared for Gilbert Burns, I expect him to stay long. He's got a reach advantage. He's got a height advantage too. He has a 76-inch reach for a guy who's build is 6 feet tall. So that's a plus 4 inches there based on his height. And so those guys always have the best success because they've got such long arms. So let me see what Burns is at. He's 5'10", 71 inch.
Yeah, he's stocky. I mean, Burns, and he won't do this. I think even though it didn't work out for Cormier in the second fight with Jon Jones, Cormier really stayed in the pocket. Like he took away the leg reach from Jones.
Right?
Yeah, he ended up getting caught. So, I mean, I can't say that it was successful at the end, but it was successful for a long time in that.
And he sent Jones's mouthpiece flying in the first 30 seconds. So he was connected.
In that second fight, right? So, you know what I mean? Like that's the way you do it. And I don't really see Gilbert Burns doing that to Usman. I see him, I imagine Gilbert Burns fights, I just don't see him standing, with the toes 3 feet apart like Cormier tried to do.
Yeah.
Found success, just not 25 minutes of it,
That hasn't been his typical strategy. Now, he is undefeated at welterweight. He is 4-0, 3 decisions and 1 finish, and that was over Damian Maia. What's interesting there is that Damian Maia landed 2 takedowns on him. I think he even gained a dominant position in that 2.5 minutes, and Maia was like 40 years old. So I think that these guys know each other really well. So I think that some of the typical weapons that each guy has are not going to be there. The one wild card is that all the old coaches that they had are still at the same gym that Burns is at, whereas Kamaru Usman is he's in Colorado, I think. And their head coach, their former shared head coach, who's now Burns' head coach, is sitting this one out. So there's a little bit of like ancillary stuff going on.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think this is going to be a safe approach as well, but I think the takedowns might be there. Burns was begging at the media day. He was like, I hope he takes me down. He said, I hope he takes me down. That could be him just talking,
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to my initial question on whether Burns deserves it, it's like when you look at welterweight, it's it's a very strong division. It's clearly not the worst division, but it's not heavyweight or the best division. It's not heavyweight either. It's hard to look at Gilbert Burns' record and go, I lost to Dan Hooker a couple years ago.
Yeah.
A bunch of guys that aren't even in the UFC anymore. Gunnar Nelson, who, Gunnar Nelson's basically the Rick Story of the last 2 years, the guy we thought was going to be really good, and hasn't come out with wins.
A lot of hype, but the star didn't shine that bright.
Yeah, at least not yet. Damian Maia is really when he got into the, really when he felt like he was a top 5 guy, because we were waiting for this great, grappling fight. And Tyron Woodley the Tyron Woodley win looks a lot less impressive today.
It does. It's a weird one. Can we retroactively discredit someone?
You can't really, but the problem is that you could look at Gilbert Burns in that vacuum, and then you can go, well, Colby lost to Usman recently. Let's get that guy another win. Leon Edwards
will be there. That rematch will be there. Don't just use it because lack of other options. This is a little bit of a filler fight, I think, for Usman. Assuming nothing goes wrong and he doesn't get picked off, I think this is just to keep him busy type of foul.
It is a filler fight, but at the same time, Gilbert Burns has beaten everyone that's in front of him. Leon Edwards hasn't fought enough, unfortunately, because of the pandemic has brought him back. Masvidal, unfortunately, we wasted Masvidal on that short notice. They knew he was a fighter that would come up. Stephen Thompson gets no respect.
Tell me about it. When Stephen Thompson beat Jeff Neal, I was like, man, if he's not injured, please just tell everyone to get other fights. I want him to fight Usman. I don't love the matchup, but man, I was so high on that beautiful victory. To see his age, see how he performed, I would still love to see that.
I want to see Stephen Thompson and Usman for sure. I mean, I think Stephen Thompson. I think Wonderboy sits back another foot on him. I think that's what ends up happening. It's not the regular distance. It's not what you and I just think Gilbert Burns should do, that Cormier had a moderate amount of successfully got knocked down against Jon Jones. I think Wonderboy stands a foot back and hopefully controls. Is Wonderboy's not scheduled, is he?
No, he's not. He's not.
Because no one wants to fight the poor guy either. That's the other problem.
No one. That's why they gave him Jeff Neal, because they were like, all right, young guy, pick him off, undefeated in the UFC.
Yeah. I mean, Wonderboy, no one wants to fight Wonderboy. The poor guy has to do YouTube videos about GSP acting.
Or top 10 video games that inspired him.
Yeah. At some point, you got to force. I know Wonderboy's a weird fighter, man, but you got to force people to fight him,
I think so. And it would be great. I know we're deep in the hypothetical realm, but man, Usman or even Burns would have to show something they've never shown before in order to beat Stephen Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, you'd really be relying on Wonderboy to make some kind of mistake or to make some kind of strategy mistake, like to sit up close to Usman or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I don't think that Usman might beat him, with the right, the right takedown here or there, or the right hard punch. I mean, that ended up with what high level Woodley did, right? I mean, it was the most boring fight in the world. You and me watched the most boring fight in the world during a baby shower. Do you remember that?
I do. I do. It was look, that was a fight that if you were looking for the action and what you come to expect from MMA, it was only there in bursts, and it was only there for a few minutes. It was a lot of strategy, a lot of moving around. No one could afford to take a chance, and of course, I think the impetus is on the person to, close the distance. I tell you though, Usman seems to be as complete of a fighter as there is. I don't think we've seen all his weapons, and I think he's going to show this weekend that he can be the bully. I think this may look even similar to what he did to Rafael dos Anjos. So if I had to make a pick, I'm saying Usman decision.
Yeah, Well, how about so I agree with that actually, but how about in the context of the odds? What is Usman right now? Minus 250, 260, 270?
Right now, Usman minus
270,
270. Nice. And
so
Burns plus 215.
I would have said plus 220. So you know what I mean? Those odds aren't great for either one to bet on, to be honest.
No, they're not. I think they're inflated the wrong direction. I would say that minus 270 is like 70% chance of winning. That's a little extreme. But because I think that, a wild card is Burns's power. And although he didn't finish Woodley, he came very close. That could have been a 1-minute fight, and we would have a lot more hype on his side. He had him down and bleeding and mounted in the first minute. I don't know if you remember this, but Woodley was mounted for like 4 minutes after getting dropped, and then the round ended. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I actually forgot Stephen Thompson had that bad knockout against Pettis. So he had 2 bad losses, right?
He was killing Pettis.
Pettis. Somehow Pettis looked good in the last 2 fights and then left the UFC. And I agree, it was well-timed Superman punch, and I think Pettis is dangerous that way, but it is still 2 losses, and he just has Luque and Neal. So I mean, I think that Thompson does need another fight before we can start talking about it. I mean, what do you think about Masvidal for him? Is that a possibility?
Well, Masvidal is booked right now.
I don't know. Who's he booked with?
He's booked with Covington.
Oh, so I didn't know that was booked.
I believe it's booked, and if it's not, it's like could be announced this weekend.
Oh no, I thought they were going back and forth saying neither one wants it.
No, they're saying
that's a better fight. We need to get that. We need to get that on.
Thompson said, "Here's the deal." He said, "Look, it's not often you see a guy who beat someone rather recently." He's like, "I beat him in I think it was 2018." He's like, I beat him, but he's pretty popular, and he's shown that he's a dog, and he's more comfortable at the weight class. Bring it on. I don't think it would look different. I still think he'd beat Masvidal, and I like Masvidal a lot. But I just think the same problems he had in that fight where he couldn't close the distance and he was kind of stymied by the style. I think that he hasn't fought the right opponents to make him have to fix that flaw in his game. Fighting.
I don't want to necessarily pick Masvidal, but what you said, I don't think. I think that Jorge Masvidal getting to see that weird style, is a big plus. I'm not saying it could end up being Stephen Thompson decision, but I think it's a lot closer. And I think we have to remember that Masvidal had that big change after that fight, like left MMA for a while, and then had his great run, and then and then got it sort of muted because he did the manly thing and took a fight he shouldn't have.
Did have a victory over a guy who beat Thompson.
Yeah. No, Masvidal and Covington are just being heavily talked about, so we'll see.
Okay, it's not official. Sorry,
that's a better fight.
I feel very high that that's what they really want to make right now. I feel that's what they're going to do. It makes sense for them. There's the grudge aspect of it, and frankly, neither guy is getting a title shot because they both lost to the current champ recently. And if Burns wins, which would be, I always love it when a monkey wrench gets thrown into the gears. So it would be pretty cool because you get a ton of fresh matchups there.
Yeah. Even if Burns doesn't win, that's a nice enough little grudge match that it could almost be, I would say it's just an iota away from being a non-title UFC pay-per-view headliner. You know what I mean? It's barely not. I mean, if the champ was injured, that would be like an interim title fight, Yeah, for sure. They'd do one of those things where they make up a title.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's since we're on it and we've just talked about a bunch of we've talked about this title fight and then talked about the welterweight division in the context, or the title fight in the context of the welterweight division. Let's talk about Leon Edwards a little bit.
Sure.
So, there's a guy that's, he's been in a situation. He's the British guy in, and by the way, if the politics don't work out for Masvidal Covington, you got Masvidal Leon Edwards right there, which is the same kind of grudge match.
That's another one that they're probably going to make. They haven't always, the UFC, their business model hasn't always been when people have some sort of like altercation behind the scenes. They haven't tried to make money off of that too often. They have a few times, like Conor versus Khabib. I mean, they milked that one as hard as they could.
Well, that one was going that way because there was a champion and there was the pay-per-view champion.
Right.
But just a real quick intro for Leon Edwards. I mean, Leon Edwards probably in MMA, across the board has taken the biggest hit from COVID, really, because
just kidding. It's
by
affected
getting it, by his opponents getting it, by being in a different country.
His car, he was supposed to fight Woodley, which meant he would be in this spot had he won that fight. And there was the first card to be canceled.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, he hasn't fought since like 2019, and I don't even think it was the end of the year.
No, he fought in the summer of 2019 against Dos Anjos.
Exactly. So I mean, we're going on over a year and a half here. So I mean, he's taken the biggest beat down, and he's going to have, I know that athletes don't want to talk about ring rust, but I mean, he's going to have a little bit of ring rust too.
I mean, it's likely. It's likely. He's a young dude. He's about 30. So, and he's at the top of his game. So, personally, I think he's going to be rusty, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're kind of counting on it because, boy, is that a weird matchup for him to get Khamzat Chimaev, because that's a fast track for Chimaev against the top guy, but the guy's been off for a long time, and so if there ever was a time to fight him, it would be now, theoretically.
Yeah, but it's a great fight too. Like Leon, I think Leon Edwards also knows the situation he's in. That right now it's a marquee fight. It sucks that he's number 4 and Chimaev is like, skating the top 10. But it's just a great fight for both of them because it puts Leon Edwards in the spotlight again, more than fighting Tyron Woodley would. You know what I mean? Right now, like Chimaev is actually a better fight for him than Woodley.
Hottest prospect in the division.
Exactly. And you know what I mean? And everything Dagestan is big right now in MMA. Yep. So I mean it's actually a good fight. It's not one of those where you have everything to lose kind of thing. And then for Chimaev, beating the number 4 guy is huge. So I think it's a situation where it's actually a good fight for both of them. And most important is that it has this fight literally has the opportunity to be a fight of the year contender or knockout of the year contender because these guys.
We're gonna learn a lot about Chimaev, but I'll tell you this: historically, when guys get fast tracked to the top after a couple wins against nobodies that they outclass, historically it doesn't bode very well for them. So here's the thing.
Well, let's give some examples because the obvious example where that's not true is Jon Jones. He got pretty fast tracked, but then became among the greatest.
I mean, he picked off some legit names along the way, dominantly. He picked off Vera. He picked off Matyashenko.
Yeah, see, those aren't.
We're talking 2009, 2010. I mean,
yeah, even at that time, though. I mean, it was in a transitional period for 205, right? But I remember when he beat Ryan Bader and he's crying because they announced he was getting the title shot. I remember thinking that's way too early. And I really like Ryan Bader. I was like, but you just beat Ryan Bader. You know what I mean? It's way too early.
And he had shown a lot.
It worked out, right?
He had shown a lot. You're right. It's not.
But Jon Jones is a special case. Before we go into the fast track thing, just so I can get my mind aligned with yours, what are some can you think of some fast track examples where it didn't work out like that?
I would say Dan Hardy is one of them. I think he was 4-0 in the UFC, lost to GSP, lost 4 in a row after that. Should have been taken out in like the first or second round by a submission, but his elbow was triple jointed and he couldn't finish it. That's the one that comes to mind immediately.
It happens in the lower weight classes, I think, too, right? Because, there's less there.
It happens, and it happens in female divisions as well. A lot of people they're in a hurry for these people who in divisions that traditionally aren't deep. It happened at 125 over and over when Demetrius Johnson was champ. You had Chris Carriosos of the world getting title shots, and then these guys wind up with like 3-3 records or losing records in the UFC and they're gone.
I feel like Benavidez might be that guy.
Fast tracked?
I mean, yeah, I think those divisions were made for Benavidez. They put him up there, and then there was a bunch of guys better than him.
Yeah, but he was an established vet. I mean, his record was like 20-3 or something at the time. So I get that he didn't look good in his title fights.
Darren Till, maybe on a lesser level, but Darren Till might have been a little.
Darren Till, great example. He did not land one strike on Woodley.
I think Darren Till may have been fast tracked, but he's on track though.
He didn't turn out to be a bust. What I'm saying is that it's a big leap to destroy the Gerald Strimbents and name these two other fighters later offline that Chimaev beat, and then fight Edwards, because the risk is if Edwards beats him badly, then it's like it might actually take. He's a very lose-lose situation for Edwards, because if Chimaev gets his butt kicked, then it's like, oh, you rushed him to the top, or he sucks, or Edwards is supposed to do that. And if Edwards
it's still a nice win for Edwards. That's why I think it's okay. This is one of the situations okay, but I get what you're saying now. Chimaev could be fast tracked, but that doesn't mean he's a bust. I think in my head, what you were saying was that they're busts.
No. Yeah. Sorry, I should have clarified. But the fast track thing just means someone too fast, too soon. Often that derails the career. And so, people wind up being a bust as a result. But it usually just sends them back kind of far, and they've really got to regroup, because it's tough to come back from that when you've tasted the top. Even Kelvin Gastelum is a little bit like that. He's had a bunch of losses in his career. He got kind of high up there, then he had a couple losses, and then he had to change divisions, and he started off hot. He's fighting this weekend too. Have you seen? He's fighting. I think it's pronounced Ian Heinisch.
Yeah.
What do you think? Kelvin's a huge favorite. He's lost 3 in a row.
I mean, Kelvin Gastelum's that, he's that guy that needs a weight class right in the middle of welterweight and middleweight. He's one of those. Definitely. Yeah,
but he's too stocky to make 170 comfortably. Still only 29.
Yeah, I think. I mean, also if you listen to his teammate, champ. Trans champ. Trans champ.
Brown Fox?
No. What was he calling? What was Cejudo calling himself?
Triple C.
No, but he was champ, but he was also he was being really cringe, challenging the flyweight champion, the flyweight. He wasn't calling himself trans champ.
What did you say to Figueiredo?
Yeah, well, he was calling himself like multi-gender, whatever it was.
Oh, wow.
But, according to his buddy Cejudo, he doesn't.
He said he was going to beat up some women. I remember that.
Yeah.
Funny stuff to say there. That's right.
Yeah, not the trans champ, but the.
He's like, Valentina, you can come and get it. You can bend the knee.
The open gender term. Anyway, according to his buddy Cejudo, Gastelum, he smokes a ton of weed. He's clearly not in the gym every week. You know what I mean?
Gastelum never misses a meal though.
Yeah, Gastelum clearly just has some natural skill. Like I've seen super athletic fat guys, and that's Gastelum essentially.
Yeah. That's not a career where he's going to be fighting at 37 because he's going to be fat. He's going the Hendricks trajectory a little bit.
Yeah, he is. But he also has a fuck ton of heart though. Like he has a ton of
very tough. What a chin.
Yeah, like Gastelum is a guy that's always welcome on my TV. Amir Khan, who is a boxer, he ended up not having a great chin, but has super fast hands, faster than Floyd Mayweather's hands. His chin was great. Amir Khan also, maybe I don't want to see it now because he's getting knocked down a lot, but from 2009 to 2015, just always welcome on my TV. There's just those guys that are just fun to watch. And that's Kelvin Gastelum.
All action with him. And Gastelum's like that too. Aside from that Stray got submitted in a 1-minute fight, his 2 fights prior, it happens. His 2 fights prior, Strembent. Sorry, not Strembent. Who's the guy who actually lost to Strembent? Who's the guy who just lost to Marvin Vettori?
I don't know. I can't remember.
He's a British guy. Maybe Welsh. Anyway.
British. Welsh is British.
Okay, yeah. So Kelvin just got tapped not too long ago by this cat.
Yeah, that was really disappointing.
Yeah. So other than that, his two fights.
Guys, Gastelum, by the way, Hermanson, yeah. That Gastelum he's got 3. Well, he's got 3 losses in a row against legit dudes though. But
yeah, those 2 fights were very competitive. Israel and Darren Till. Israel for the interim was neck and neck going into the 5th round, and of course he lost it pretty convincingly the 5th, but he was very close there. See, his thing is you sorry.
I'll let you finish. I'm just gonna throw this in. Gilbert Burns' resume doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like Jack Hermansson's the worst guy in his last 6 fights.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. Everyone is a champion or number 1 contender in their organizations. I mean, starting with Tim Kennedy, going back to Hendricks at UFC 200. That's like a murderer's row. He either fought Strikeforce champions, Strikeforce number 1 challengers, UFC champs.
Legends, Bisping and Belfort.
Bisping was 1 fight removed from being the champ, although it was weird circumstances, but nonetheless, he's right there. The thing with Gastelum is you pretty much called him out for his weakness. You spotted it. He seems like anyone who smokes that much herb, they're usually a little bit slower. They just don't give that much. And you kind of see that in his fights. He just kind of shows up, but he doesn't look like he's preparing. He looks like he's like the mental aspect seems like it's not even something he considers. He's like, all right, let me be sharp, let me be fast. But aside from that little duck and dodge and then landing the left, he hasn't shown that he's willing to diversify his game. And that could be a problem against Heinrich. Again, another dude who's probably bigger than him.
Yeah. And that plus he really can't find his weight class. He weighs enough to be at the weight class he's in, but his frame is really meant to be 1 lower kind of thing, But I love Kelvin Gastelum. He's always welcome.
Too. I don't like seeing him lose 3 fights in a row. I don't like seeing him get tapped in a minute. I think this will be one of his better fights.
I don't either, but if it's Adesanya, Darren Till, and Jack Hermansson, I mean, you like to see him beat Jack Hermansson, but Jack Hermansson's really good too. He's
really good too, and he's one of the better grapplers in the division.
Yeah. So I can forgive those.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can't lose tonight. You can't lose this weekend.
No, if he loses this weekend, bye 185. Hello, new diet. Hello, sports and nutrition, conditioning and nutrition.
Well, maybe that's good for him. Maybe then we hope he loses because he shouldn't be. You know what I mean? He should be fighting at 170.
Come on, Gastelum, please lose. Get back to 170. No, I'm just kidding. But he belongs at 170. He's fighting at 185 for the same reason Hendricks fought at 185. I don't think I can cut the weight anymore.
Where's he? Is he training in Arizona? Is he training in Arizona with Cejudo?
Yeah.
Hey, Kelvin Gastelum, this is a open invitation to run stairs with me and Afshin.
We'll see you at that park off Cheyenne, my friend.
Yeah, we'll see you at the park on Gowan and Tenaya, and we'll just run stairs. We'll just do that, play some music, run stairs nonstop.
It's odd because here's the thing. I didn't pay attention to where his camp is this time. Traditionally, he's been at King's MMA for a large part of it, which is Rafael Cordero's camp. Yeah. And you've got a lot of good stars there. And so even if he's there, maybe he needs to switch something up because we're not getting the best version of him his last, even the Till fight. He should have grappled more. He should not have lost the Till in his first foray up at 185. And then Stremben, he just looked like, sorry, I keep calling him Stremben, Hermansson. He just looked like he just was going to show up and win without strategizing. Hey, this guy can't strike, but he's a grappler with moves.
With that said, he gave Israel Adesanya his biggest test.
He did. Again, he hadn't been figuring out striking.
Yeah, that says loss here on Wikipedia and SureDog, but I mean, Adesanya became a better fighter because of that fight.
Well, he was tested by a guy with arguably more power than him.
Yeah,
probably. I wouldn't even argue it. I would say his one-punch KO power is stronger than Adesanya's.
Yeah, one-punch KO power, and then also tried to throw him around and was able to do a little bit.
Yeah, he was giving him dirty looks and everything, man. He was hand on the head, uppercuts, crowding him.
To be honest, when we get off here, I'm going to go rewatch that fight. I love that fight.
Before we call it, tell me, Macy Barber's coming back. Any interest?
Yeah. I mean, interest in watching it. I'll be honest, not interested in talking about it because I'm not prepared for it, kind of thing.
All I can tell you is she's coming off a knee injury, and I think she's going to beat Alexa Grasso.
Yeah. So just from what I remember watching them, like, it's I'm probably too hard on that being the co-main event.
Oh, this is totally like Demetrius Johnson supporting cast here, like we talked about.
Yeah, we talked about it last time, but it's probably going to be a good fight. You know what happens with these cards too is when it's anchored by just the title fight, is that you end up like sitting and watching and be like, every one of these fights was fucking awesome. Why did I spend 2 weeks talking shit about this card? You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think it's going to be a good card, but you and I like fights, so that helps. Yeah. This is a card that the hardcores buy. This isn't like reaching out and bringing necessarily too many more new fans, but it's got competitive fights and a lot of storylines. Like, well, this person's is this person over the hill? Is this person? Does this person need to change weight divisions with this loss? What happens when these two teammates who trained for 10 years together? What happens when they fight? So it's at least it's compelling.
Yeah, and actually, we should have maybe spent more time on that. Like that is that thread is compelling that they've trained with each other.
We'll get there.
Coaches are sitting out. You know what I mean? In fact, I think that we'll look at, and the postmortem will look closer at that, like how much that mattered.
I think they're going to completely know each other's game with the one oddball of if Usman is comfortable in his like year away from the team, doing more striking. He's doing a lot more striking these days. So we'll see.
Yeah, and what's funny when they train with each other is that in their minds they both know who's better.
Well, you've heard that, right? You've heard that that's like a theme where everyone behind the scenes supposedly knows who's better, which pretty much means that it's Usman who's better. Otherwise, Gilbert Burns would have been it would have been more out in the open as soon as he changed divisions. That hey, he can beat up the champ. I'm going with it's probably Usman who got the better of it. Today at the media day, Burns said, look, he knows he's beaten me some rounds. He also knows I've beaten him too, and I can submit him if we go to the ground.
Well, that's what I want to see. I want to see Burns figure that out.
I want to see something new out of each guy. We've seen a lot of looks from Burns. I want to see him. He knows Usman, so he knows where he can get him in trouble. Can he put him there is the question, but it should be exciting. I want to see Usman. I want to see him. I want to see him tested.
Okay, perfect. Let's button up there.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. So here on the Chaotic Sports channel and the Fist on Chin brand, I mean, we can legitimately talk about one fight for 45 minutes.
Yeah, seriously.
In the context of the whole weight class, of course. So that's actually great. It's something I knew that was going to happen when me and Afshin got together. I know this in the same way that Usman and Burns know who's going to win because we have plenty of time off camera doing that. So
say that again.
I appreciate everyone being checking us out. I know there's a lot of MMA content out there, but
ours is better than most of it. You don't need a name. You don't need you guys who are fans.
I won't say that because TriStar's out there doing like video breakdowns, and Stephen Thompson is talking about GSP fight scenes with Steven Seagal. But I will tell you this.
Thank God he's doing that.
Yeah, I will tell you this. We'll actually be your fucking friend. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. At Chaos and Comics, at Fist on Chin on Twitter. Find us here. We'll figure it out Wednesday nights or Thursday mornings. And we will make sure we do as many postmortems as we can. At least that's what I'm calling them, the post-fight review. Any closing thoughts, Afshin, before I end this?
No, I just want to say thanks to the Chaotic Sports Network and the Fist on Chin fight program we've got going on here. I want to build it up, so let's keep doing that. And stay tuned, people, because as we gain a little bit of momentum here, we'll start bringing on some interesting guests and things of that nature through our ties to the industry.
Awesome. Thanks, Afshin.
All right, thanks. Stay on.
See you guys later.